The morning sunlight spilled across the skyline, painting the glass towers in soft gold. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my Manhattan apartment, silk blouse clinging to my shoulders, a steaming cup of coffee warming my hand. To the world, I was just another polished woman in the city, calm, composed, untouchable. What they didn't see was the history I carried, tucked neatly behind a practiced smile. My phone buzzed on the marble counter, breaking the quiet hum of the city. A notification from the Harrington Hotel, my parents' pride and joy, the very place where I once scrubbed dishes and folded linens just to earn their approval. The message was curt: reservation denied. Guests with your name are not welcome on the premises. For a second, I just stared at it, my pulse thrumming. They had banned me. My own parents, still wielding power like a weapon, as if I were a shame they could erase with a single line in a system. I laughed, softly, almost bitterly. They had no idea. They had no idea that the very chain they clung to so tightly, the legacy they believed was only theirs, now belonged to me. I set the cup down, tracing my finger against the cool rim, and allowed the irony to settle. The girl they once discarded had returned, not in rags, not begging, but as the owner of everything they thought they controlled. I wasn't always this woman, polished, confident, secure in her place. There was a time when my reflection in the mirror showed nothing but doubt and desperation. I was 19, living under my parents' roof, in the staff quarters of their hotel. To guests, they were gracious owners, the perfect hosts. But behind closed doors, their words cut deeper than broken glass. I still remember the night it all came to a head. The lobby smelled faintly of lilies, the kind my mother insisted on keeping at the front desk. My hands shook as I set down a tray of champagne flutes, my palms damp with sweat. I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to study hospitality management, maybe even run a business of my own one day. But when I spoke those words aloud at dinner, my father's laugh was sharp, cruel. "You," he sneered, pointing his fork at me as though I were some stranger. "You'll never run anything more than a mop and bucket. Don't embarrass yourself." The sting of those words burned hotter than the tears that blurred my vision. My mother didn't defend me. She adjusted her pearl necklace and muttered, "Best to listen to your father." That night, I sat outside the hotel service entrance, the cold concrete biting into my legs. My grandmother, the only person who ever truly saw me, found me there. She pressed a small silver key into my palm, its edges cool and firm. "This," she whispered, "isn't a key to a door. It's a reminder. You can unlock your own life. Don't wait for them to hand it to you." I held that key so tightly it left an imprint in my skin. It became my anchor, my symbol of defiance and hope. The next morning, with trembling hands, I packed my single suitcase. No fanfare, no goodbyes, just the quiet hum of a taxi pulling away from the only world I had ever known. My parents didn't chase me. They didn't even look up from their ledgers. As the city's skyline stretched before me, I promised myself one thing: I would never again beg for a seat at their table. I would build my own. Starting over wasn't glamorous. The movies make it look like freedom is exhilarating, but in reality, it was nights spent on a lumpy mattress in a studio apartment that smelled faintly of mildew, counting out coins to make sure I could afford instant noodles. I worked every job I could find: waitress by day, cashier by night, and on weekends, housekeeping at a budget motel. Each shift was grueling, my feet blistered, my back aching. But as I scrubbed floors and balanced trays, I paid attention. I studied how managers treated their staff, how customers responded to kindness, how small details transformed an experience. My notebook became my Bible, filled with observations, sketches, and ideas. One evening, after a 12-hour shift, I stumbled into a late-night diner and ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu. That's where I met Elaine Turner, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a voice that carried authority without arrogance. She owned a small but thriving boutique hotel and noticed me scribbling in my notebook. "What are you plotting in there?" she asked with a smile. I laughed nervously and admitted, "Dreams I can't afford yet." Elaine leaned forward. "Dreams you write down are just blueprints waiting for action." Show me what you've got. That conversation changed everything. She became my mentor, teaching me not only the mechanics of the hospitality business, but also how to survive as a woman in a field dominated by men with deep pockets and louder voices. She gave me chances others wouldn't: small projects, guest relations, design consultations. I made mistakes, plenty of them, but Elaine never let me wallow. Failure's just tuition for the real world, she'd say. There were nights I cried, convinced I wasn't enough. The self-doubt echoed my father's words. You'll never run anything more than a mop and bucket. But every time I felt myself slipping, I touched the small silver key on the chain around my neck. My grandmother's reminder. Unlock your own life. The first real breakthrough came when I pitched an idea to revamp one of Elaine's lobbies: modern art pieces, subtle lighting, local artisan decor. She gave me a tiny budget, and 1 month. When the project was done, the guests raved. Bookings increased. For the first time, I felt the rush of creating something bigger than myself. From there, I took risks. I saved relentlessly, worked extra shifts, and eventually bought my first rundown motel on the outskirts of Boston. Everyone said I was crazy. The place reeked of mold and failure. But I poured my energy into it, repainting walls, installing new linens, training staff with the philosophy I'd built in my notebook. Every guest should feel like the most important person in the building. Within a year, that little motel turned a profit. Then came another property and another. Slowly, my empire took shape, discreet, growing, unstoppable. I never bragged. To my parents, I was invisible, still the daughter who had failed them. On social media, I posted modest updates, a picture of coffee, a sunset, nothing more. They had no idea. But behind the curtain, the girl they had dismissed was building something far greater than the Harrington Hotel. I wasn't just surviving. I was becoming the very thing they swore I could never be: an owner, a leader, a chain builder. The Harrington Hotel loomed in front of me like a ghost from another life. Its polished glass doors reflected the city lights, the marble lobby glowing as if nothing had changed. But I had changed. I wasn't the timid girl they'd pushed aside. I was the woman who now held the keys, literally and figuratively, to everything they thought was theirs. I stepped inside, heels clicking against the marble. The scent of lilies hit me instantly, a reminder of my mother's obsession with appearances. The concierge gave me a polite smile before his eyes flickered to a screen. The smile faded. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he stammered. "Your name has been flagged. You're not permitted entry." It should have hurt. Instead, I almost pitied him. He didn't know that the woman he was trying to turn away signed his paycheck. Before I could respond, I heard the familiar clipped tone of my mother. "What's going on here?" She appeared in a tailored suit, pearls around her neck, still carrying herself like royalty. Behind her, my father joined, his expression sharp and impatient. When their eyes landed on me, my mother's lips pursed. "You." "I thought we made it clear. You are not welcome here." My heart thudded, but I stood tall. "Funny," I said, my voice calm, smooth. "Considering this is my building." Silence. For a beat, they didn't register the words. My father chuckled, dismissive. "Don't be ridiculous. You don't belong here. You never did." I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim leather folder. Inside were documents, the merger papers, the acquisitions, the proof that I had quietly bought the chain from under them piece by piece, until there was nothing left they controlled. I slid the folder across the concierge desk. "Read it," I said softly. My father's hands shook as he flipped through the pages, his face draining of color. My mother leaned over, pearls trembling against her collarbone. The room seemed to shrink around us, the staff pretending not to stare, the hum of the lobby air conditioning suddenly deafening. "You own this?" my mother whispered, her voice cracking. I nodded. "Not just this hotel. The entire chain. Every property you thought was your empire is now mine." The words hung heavy in the air. My father's jaw tightened, his pride crumbling in real time. My mother pressed a hand to her chest, her eyes glistening with something between shock and regret. For years, I had imagined this moment, me, standing in the place where they had once humiliated me, reclaiming my worth. And now it was here. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. I was steady, powerful, exactly the woman they had told me I could never be. You banned me from walking through these doors, I said, letting the weight of the irony sink in. But what you didn't realize is that I've owned the keys all along. My father's mouth opened, then closed. No clever insult came. No dismissal. Just silence, the kind that tastes like defeat. Around us, staff exchanged glances, whispers rippling through the lobby. For the first time in my life, the Harrington name didn't overshadow me. I had eclipsed it. I took a step closer, lowering my voice, so only they could hear. This isn't revenge. This is reality. You told me I'd never run anything. But here I am, running everything you once held dear. So tell me, mother, father, how does it feel to be guests in my house? Their silence was the sweetest answer I'd ever heard. I let the silence linger, heavy and undeniable. For once, my parents had no script, no cutting remark, no polished facade to hide behind. The staff who once watched me scrub floors were now watching them squirm. I could have left it at that. The reveal, the humiliation. But power, I'd learned, isn't just about possession. It's about choice. And I had a choice to make. I won't throw you out, I said finally, my voice calm but firm. But things will not go back to the way they were. If you want any part of this company, any part of me, there are conditions. My father bristled, as if the word itself was an insult. Conditions? From you? Yes, I replied, steady. From me. I turned to him first. You built your life on control, on breaking people down to make yourself taller. That ends here. If you want access to this hotel again, you'll attend counseling. You'll learn how to respect people, not just employees, not just me, but everyone. Until then, you're a liability. His jaw clenched, but I didn't flinch. I shifted my gaze to my mother. And you, I said softly, though the edge in my words remained. You hid behind silence. You watched him cut me down, and instead of lifting me up, you adjusted your pearls. If you want to stay involved in this business, even in the smallest way, you must use your voice, not for appearances, but for truth. That means community work, real work, helping women who were silenced like I was. Prove you can stand for something other than keeping up appearances. Her eyes filled, tears clinging to her lashes. I almost looked away, but I didn't. Compassion didn't mean weakness. And there's one more condition, I added, straightening my shoulders. Neither of you will ever again dictate who I am or who I can be. You will respect me as the woman I've become, or you'll have no place in my life, or this chain. That choice is yours. The weight of my words settled over them. My father looked like he wanted to explode, but something in his eyes told me he knew he'd lost. My mother nodded faintly, as though she'd been waiting for someone, anyone, to call her out and demand more. I turned to the staff, who had been frozen, unsure whether to breathe. Nothing changes for you, I assured them. If anything, things get better. I know what it's like to be dismissed, to be invisible. That ends today. Every voice matters here. A murmur of relief swept the room. Some even smiled. For the first time, I wasn't just rewriting my story, I was rewriting theirs too. As I walked toward the grand staircase, I could feel my parents' eyes burning into my back. The tables had turned permanently. They weren't the rulers anymore. The power shift was complete, and the conditions were clear. I didn't need their approval. I had built my own empire. But if they wanted a place in it, they would have to earn it, the same way I had. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of that confrontation spread wider than I'd expected. My father, stubborn as stone, resisted at first. But with every board meeting he was excluded from, every staffer who no longer jumped at his barked orders, he began to soften. Slowly, he agreed to counseling. I heard from the HR director that he sat in silence for the first few sessions, but eventually, the cracks in his pride gave way. My mother surprised me most. She started volunteering at a local women's shelter, not for photo opportunities, but quietly, without fanfare. One afternoon, I stopped by unannounced and saw her kneeling on the floor, helping a young girl sort through donated clothes. No pearls, no pretense, just a woman rediscovering her voice. I didn't forgive them overnight. Healing doesn't work like that. But I saw change, real change, and that was enough to loosen the knot in my chest. Late one evening, I sat in my office, overlooking the glittering skyline. On my desk sat the silver key my grandmother had given me. I held it in my palm, tracing its edges. Once, it had been a symbol of escape, a reminder that I could unlock my own life. Now, it was proof that I had. I thought of the girl I used to be, sitting on cold concrete outside the service entrance, tears staining her cheeks. I wanted to tell her, hold on. One day, you'll own the doors they slammed in your face. A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. My assistant peeked in. Everything all right, Miss Harrington? I smiled. Not the polite, practiced smile of survival, but a real one. Everything's perfect. As the office lights reflected off the silver key, I whispered the words I wished my parents had said to me long ago, words I now carried as truth. I am enough. I always was. And with that, I closed the chapter on pain, opening the door, my door, to a future built on strength, independence, and grace.